Arkansas boy with a lifelong plan took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line. While tears streamed from his mama's eyes, they hopped right up on that Greyhound bus, swapping stories. They laughed and cussed, and they talked about the girls that they loved. They made a pact, shined up their boots, got the call before it hit the news. No clue what they were about to do. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to the Finish This Fight Hour. My name is Glenn Baker. I am your host. And today we got a pretty special event. I've got a young lady that's a friend of mine that's down here in South Florida, but she travels an awful lot. And this is a unique perspective. Now, this is Warrior Wednesday, and I want you to understand warriors come in all shapes and sizes. When I talk about being in the fight and finishing this fight, I don't necessarily mean a military battle. I mean personal battles. I mean physical battles. I mean spiritual battles. I mean those kind of battles that we have choices when we go through those things, y'all. And I've shared my story many times, and people ask me, well, Glenn, how'd you get through that? How did you survive? Here's the thing. It's not about what happens to you. It's about what you do with what happens to you that defines your character and sets you on a path to greatness. Well, I've got a friend that's been on a path of greatness for many, many years, and she's leading others. And I want you all to say hello to my friend, Sue Trombino. Hi, Sue. How are you today, girl?
Hey, Glenn. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks to your audience, and hi to everybody.
Well, I'm going to take my man makeup off now. This increases my hotness factor by 50%. Then I take it off, and I look like I've been run over by a truck, but I can't see anything without these little spectacles. So now I can see you clearly.
I hear you.
Where are you at today? Where we getting you from?
Actually, I'm right here on the road in Palm Beach County, and as you can see, I'm in my Jeep and heading to the RV, but wanted to pull over and join you today.
Well, let me give a quick little introduction. So, Sue, you were proudly born in Caracas, Venezuela. You quickly learned the joy of travel as you were raised in Central America, Africa, and Europe. Good Lord, that's a lot of places. Having grown up on 4 continents, you can faithfully say that the world was your teacher. Because of this, you witnessed great beauty in the economic hardships that plague so many nations across this planet. Your experience cultivated a particular understanding and appreciation for our Judeo-Christian values upon which this country, America, was founded. You've seen banana republics and you've been to the Constitutional Republic here in the U.S. And you're honored to make your home here in the U.S. Talk to me. Let's talk about your history. Born in Caracas, Venezuela. What was that like?
Well, I mean, I was there till I was yet little when I first when we left there. So I think I was 3 years old. So, some things I remember, but I've been back. And but my father, my dad was a First Marine Division Guadalcanal. So I know you talk about warriors, and so the armed service are really special in my heart. And but my dad was a First Marine Division Guadalcanal, so I bleed Semper Fi. I always say that I'm the daughter of a Marine and I'm the daughter of the King. So,
Well,
but
to
my
your
father.
father, the best that I can do is a big old hearty hoo-ah, because I was Army, not a Marine, but I can give it to him.
Oh gosh, I have maybe I'll tell you a story with the Army with Alan West and me, but my father didn't. Once he got out of the Marine Corps, he worked for Standard Oil because my father was actually born in Bilbao, Spain, so he obviously Spanish. met my mom. My mom was in the Waves, which was, the Navy, part of the women, but the Navy. And so they met in San Francisco, got married, and my dad was working for Standard Oil, and that was kind of the journey that, where here I came. Uh, so lived in Venezuela, and then we moved to San Salvador for 5 years, and Nicaragua for four. Um, just real quick, Puerto Rico for three, and then my dad would travel back and forth to West Africa, to Yaoundé, Equatorial Guinea, Douala, and so we would go with him. And then my dad was transferred to Madagascar. And so at the time, I didn't speak French, didn't speak Malgache, of course. And there was only one American, well, there was American school, but it was full. And I didn't speak French at the time, didn't speak Malgache or anything like that. So my dad put me in a boarding school in Madrid, Spain. So went there half a year. Then I went to a French school in Madagascar, and then ended up my 10th through 12th grade years going to a Lutheran missionary school. And then I came here to go to college, and I went to Florida Southern College in Lakeland, and then went to get started my master's down in Boca Raton at FAU, and that's kind of how where we met my husband, and then here we are 40 some odd years later.
Wow, that's quite a journey as a child. I mean, you actually got more education than most people can even imagine. I would assume just from being in different places and having to relearn local traditions and local customs and those kind of things. History was probably pretty important.
Well, I always say that, the world is the best history teacher. I mean, I was very blessed to be able to live in all those countries because it gave me a perspective of, we're really all the same. We all bleed red. We have the same wants, desires. We just have different customs and obviously languages. But it was a real privilege for me to be able to learn different languages. My dad he was just an incredible diplomat.
Uh-huh.
I say this I mean, it really took, I believe it was 6 or 7 attorneys to replace my father. My father was not an attorney, but he was such an incredible people person. And he dealt with presidents of countries, ambassadors, and all, but he was so humble. And he just was he was just an amazing man, and my mom was just the wind beneath his wings. And so I got to witness something really special that, a lot of people don't get that. But just living in the Muslim world, I've lived, like I said, Central, South America, Africa. So I have a little bit of a different perspective on certain things, but realizing that people are people, and it really comes down to your character, what you've been put into. But I've been very blessed, to say the least, to live in
Well, and
different
that's one of the
cultures.
reasons that I really wanted to bring you on today. Besides the fact that we've talked about this off and on for quite a while, is you've got a unique perspective to what's going on in our country, but also in our world right now. You've seen it from several different angles. And one of the challenges, I think, one of the reasons we are where we are in the United States of America is because most people don't have but one perspective. And ultimately, it's the perspective that somebody else wants you to have. In 2014, the Smith-Mundt Act was repealed or revised by the Obama administration, and Obama signed that into law. What's a Smith-Mundt Act? People may ask. Well, that was a law that was put into place in the 40s. That was made it illegal for the United States of America to use propaganda against its citizens. We could no longer do that. Well, in 2014, that was revised and made legal to do. Now, it was being done some before anyway, but it's so openly out there now that the mainstream media that's owned by 6 corporations, 94% of the media that we have in this country is owned by 6 corporations. They're able to guide and manipulate information. So I say all that to say a lot of people are just getting one perspective, and it probably isn't even their own, Sue. What do you see is going on here in the United States and around the world right now that we need to be particularly cognizant of and careful about?
Well, first of all, we truly, living overseas, everybody learns about the Banana Republic. Well, what is that? Well, We have become the banana republic on steroids. And I've always said that, every American, I've said this for 20 years since I started We Impact the Nation. We were actually Women Impacting the Nation, which our tagline is WIN. When we show up, we win. But we've morphed it into We Impact the Nation, same tagline. But I've always believed that every American should be made to live overseas for 1 year. Now, before I used to say not in Paris or London, but now you don't even want to go there, those places. I hate to say it because of
Oh,
what's
people have
happening
no
with the
idea if you
Muslim
talk to
world, and we can
anybody.
get into all of that. But I really believe every American should be made to go overseas. And I'd say, you love socialism. You're regurgitating all these taglines and all these little these buzzwords that people don't even know what those buzzwords mean.
Sure.
But I've said, if you love socialism, you love what's going on, and you think we're so fascism, people don't even know what that word means. But I would love to give you, and I say my husband panics because he knows I'm going to do it, but I will give your audience, I will give anybody a free ticket to the country of my birth. The caveat is you have to stay there for 6 days. I go, honey, you wouldn't last two.
Hmm.
People have no idea. I've said for 20 years, Glenn, that Americans are in a bubble. And if I offend, your audience, I apologize, but I'm really not, because I want to speak truth to you. But Americans are in a bubble. And we think that's not going to happen here. This is America. And we become the proverbial frogs in the pot, and we're boiling to death. But if we continue to become apathetic, disengaged, disinterested, and you lose America, I ask your audience, where do you go from here? Everybody in the world wants to come here. Where do
Right.
you go? Now, I've lived pretty much all the different continents. I know, I mean, every country I've lived in, and my husband goes, Sue, you better stop saying that. But I go, but it's true. Every country I've lived in, there's been a coup. I
Right.
know I've been where we've used, we couldn't even talk to our parents without using, certain words. So I know what it's like to be spied on. I know what it's like to be listened in on. My parents, my dad. I mean, so we all know that when you grow up like that, and you learn to be wise, you learn to pay attention and be, you know, um, uh, just be cognizant of your surroundings.
Hmm.
But Americans, we're just, it is absolutely appalling how we've so dumbed down. And when you say you're taking away that act, the propaganda is beyond unbelievable. But the propaganda's always been there, but now it's on steroids.
Right.
And they've done it all on purpose. This wasn't done, everybody thinks, oh, well, this just happened. Now, I believe, my humble opinion, that it happened before Obama, but Obama was the catalyst to go. I mean, to just open the floodgates. And he even said he came 2 years too early.
Right.
And so what you have to understand is that the proper. I mean, I remember living in Madagascar, and my grandmother from upstate New York was so panicked because we were living in Madagascar because it was the fight when the Falkland Islands, with the with the English and
Uh-huh.
all that. They were panicked because they were so afraid that it was affecting us. And I'm like, have you looked at a map? Here's the Falkland Islands, and we're way over here. And
Right.
people have no idea. We've so dumbed down our education. We've been indoctrinated so much, and you wonder why our kids can't even proficiently read out of high school. They can't, forget the math. They can't even do 2 plus 2. A lot of them, and this is not a joke. This is very serious. But because they've indoctrinated, and when we and because we've been in this bubble and we're so blessed, I always say that we're America is not perfect, but we are exceptional. And I personally take exception to anybody that says otherwise. That's why I say
Right.
I'll give you a free ticket. You wouldn't last, again, you wouldn't last 2 days. Doesn't matter what country I send you to, you wouldn't last there because we are just so spoiled, and I mean, we're blessed. We really are blessed, but we take a lot of things for granted. But the propaganda, what you talked about, Glenn, is beyond the pale. And it is just, and the sad part about it, and I say this during our win talks that we have all over the country, if something sounds good, quote unquote, that's a big red flag. And that's what they're doing from CNN to, and I'm sorry, but all the way to Fox News. I personally haven't watched Fox News in 11 years because it's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying.
Right. Yeah.
And because it sounds good, everybody goes, "Oh, that sounds good." So they fall over here. And now I just saw today that the White House is putting up a like a fake news, I don't know if it's a website or a podcast or something, but about the fake news,
Hmm.
because people are throwing things up that are so blatantly lies.
Right.
It's not a little white lie. It's not a little, a misinformation. It is a, let's call it what it is, a lie. It's a
Hmm.
total lie. And yet the saddest part of everything is that people are buying into it. And
Well,
that's the
Sue,
propaganda.
exactly, and it's been said many times, and I'm finding it to be true. Is the longer you scream a lie into existence, people believe it becomes the truth. I was one of those people you were talking about that was complacent and just believed my country was cared about me, loved me, was a great thing. There was it would never happen in the U.S. And then I went through something horrible, which opened my eyes up to the fact that no, this is not the country that I
Mhm.
fought for. And you're talking about, well, you would give somebody, anybody want to call you and get a plane ticket to Venezuela, but they have to stay for 6 days. What are they going to discover when they get there?
Mhm. Yeah.
Tell me
It's
this. What is the difference? What are the things that we need to be looking for right now happening here that if we went to Venezuela, our eyes would be open and we would see it? Let's just say Joe Blow calls you and says, I want to go. What's he going to find when he lands in Venezuela?
You know what? Benny Johnson, I'll answer that question in a second, but there's a great video that all your audience needs to go look at. You just um, Google it or go on YouTube, I think it is, and you put in Benny Johnson and then Cuba. I think there was, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 guys. This is when Benny he was real young, and they wanted to do a documentary on Cuba. And they said, because everybody says, well, Cuba is a communist country. Oh no, but everybody looks so, the buildings look so nice and everything. We're going to go there. Go watch that film. I think it's like even 20 minutes long. They got out of there within 2 days. The lines. Forget gas. Forget gas. I mean, you're waiting in line. If anybody remembers what happened with COVID when you had to wait in line for toilet paper, oh, that's nothing. That's like you're going into Walt Disney. You have no idea what it's like to stand in a line. This is a true story. There's a gentleman. This is just one little story, but they have like it's not tattooed into their arm, but it's got a marker. So this elderly man's got number 5 on his arm, and he may go on Mondays and Wednesdays to the store, and he'll get up and he may wait 6 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours, 18 hours, and he gets to the front of the line and they say, "Up, no, I must. There's no more. Now you got to come back on Wednesday." So you got nothing. You didn't get rice. You didn't get beans. You didn't get your Burger King, have it your way kind of thing. No,
Mhm.
no, no. You get whatever's there if they have it. But if they don't, then you've got to come back on Wednesday. Meanwhile, you're putting they're putting tubes together and from some dirt cruddy water muddy hole to try to put the water go through the tubes to go into your house, and that's what they wash with, that's what they clean their dishes with, or they
Mhm.
take a bath with, they drink from. And you in the United States, you wouldn't give that to your worst enemy. And yet
Right.
this is how they're living. They're eating their dogs and cats. This is not a joke. You won't go into a Publix and go, well, wait a minute, how come they don't have or go into a Starbucks and how come they don't have my grande latte, whatever coffee? No, 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 no. You can, if you get coffee, then I'm almost an elitist because you
Right.
get, so the gas, forget it. As far as food lines, you're waiting forever, and if you're blessed enough, you get maybe one little scoopful of something. Um,
Well, but
and
sir, that'll never happen in the U.S.
yeah, look at what's happening already. Let's just take Mandami up in New York. Right
Mhm.
now, because of what Trump did, Venezuela, even though it's going to be a long ways to go right now, they're still afraid there because you have your militia goonsmen that are on their little motorcycles going through the town and trying to intimidate people and showing off their guns and all that. But they are freer Glenn, Venezuela is freer right now than New York is, because
Right.
just look at the stories. I mean, and I heard something the other day and I thought, my gosh, is that not true? See, before they wanted to make they didn't pick up your trash or whatever in the lower income. Now they're doing it in the high middle income to the higher income
Hmm.
brackets, because they want the elite, they want the higher income people to get out of New York so that they can make it, bring in all the other Muslims and all this kind of stuff. And before anybody smashes me about the Muslims, you know, know of what you speak, because we can talk about that, because
We
that is,
can. I was also in a
you
Muslim world
know,
during
so
Desert
yeah.
Storm.
So you see, that. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
but what's happening in Miami? They don't get anything. They don't. The trash isn't being picked up. The rats, the squalor that they're living in. It's just absolutely. And that's in New York. That is supposed to be the financial hub of our entire country and the world. I
Sure.
mean, that's like, and then yet that's becoming. We're so dumbing down. Look at, you go into Dearborn, Michigan. You would think that that was a third world country. So when people say, well, that's not going to happen here, it already has. Go into Dearborn. That's exactly like living in the Muslim world. I mean, in Boca Raton, where, we lived, they started to put up a mosque. And I told my husband, I said, listen to me, the way they did the mosque, and they always do a mosque near a elementary school, a college, somewhere near there. And then right down the street, they built another mosque. And that mosque had the minaret. Now, the minaret is that tall, thin. Well, first of all, they do what's called a madras. A madras is a school. So they built the mosque, and then they have the school in it, and for the kids, and then they build the minaret. The minaret is that tall, thin tower. That's where they do the call to prayer. And I told my husband a while ago, I said, if I hear that call to prayer, I said, we are out of here. I said, that call to prayer is demonic. It is
If,
demonic.
if
If you
people have never
listen to
heard
it,
that, yeah,
oh,
if people
it's
have never
demonic.
heard that, I don't even know that I would recommend it, but you probably need to. Is go online and just Google for the call of prayer and listen to that thing. The
Oh, yeah.
first time I heard it was in Saudi Arabia in 1990, and we had just gotten into the Khobar Towers. You may remember the Khobar Towers. They were attacked a year or so, maybe 2 years after the first Gulf War, with a suicide bomber. So these were 7 to 9 story apartment buildings that were built for the nomads to live, but they wouldn't live on top of each other. So they were all brand new. So we were put into the Khobar Towers when we first ETS or got into Saudi Arabia. The next morning, 5 a.m., we're out on the balcony, hadn't slept, and there was a speaker, Sue, I promise you it wasn't 100 feet from us, that just all of a sudden began to blast this. One of my privates that was in my section under me literally almost jumped off of a story balcony, scared to death. It is that intense.
Hmm.
And this thing is being played. And it's being
Oh,
played in
yes.
Dearborn. It's being played in the United States. And it's
Yes.
being played not once, 5 times a day.
Yes, they do. And that's where, see, so if people say it's not happening here, just go there. And see, the problem is when you go to whether it's the Dearborn thing, or look in Somalia. Look, I mean Somalia. It's the Somalis. But look in Minneapolis, what's happening. Go over to L.A. Look at the homeless issue. So forget the Muslims. Let's go into the homeless issues. So if it's not gonna, if that's not happening here, yes, it is happening here. The problem is we are so vast. I mean, look at how big we are.
Mhm.
50 states, and I remember this past year we were traveling in our RV, and we were in we were in Georgia, and we had done 9 meetings in 3 days in Georgia. I mean, in a college, in high school, or in homes, in churches, just talking to people. I'm not telling you how to vote, who to vote for, but just stirring the pot, getting people to think, because we truly, Glenn, have become a nation of non-thinkers. And Karl Marx said a nation of non-thinkers is easily led. But I realized, and this was really poignant to me. So we're in this tiny town, and the questions that were asked, I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, these people aren't even an hour and a half from Georgia, and they do not have a clue what's happening in Georgia, Atlanta. They don't have a clue what's happening in Atlanta, let alone Macon, let alone Texas, let alone California. They're in their own bubble. And if you're just listening to that media, which everybody around the world has always brought up on CNN and all the, that stuff, and that's what people are listening to. And if that's what they're listening to, that's what they're going to regurgitate. And that's how you know what people are watching. I mean, you could put 20 people in front of me in a line, and I'd ask them questions, and I could tell you exactly what you're listening to, what you're watching, because of what you're regurgitating. And it's not based on truth or facts. It's all emotion, conjecture, and their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you're not entitled to your opinion, but you're just not entitled to your own facts, right?
Right.
So that's the problem, is that we're so vast. And if you're just watching one type of, you know, being a Christian really gives you, well, this is kind of an oxymoron, I want to say, because sometimes you can have Christians that don't have discernment either, but you have some sense of what is right and wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like what's happening right now. It's meant to divide our country, and people are just watching what's happening I keep saying Somalia, but I mean Minneapolis. What's
Well, it's
happening
kind
there
of the
with the
same thing
ICE.
right now.
That's why I think I'm anyway. But people have to really, I say, keep your powder dry. Just don't react. Stop. Think. Is this really true? Is it true? We don't know, but it sounds good. So if it sounds good to me, that's a big red flag. Pay attention. And if there's a lot of chaos, which that is happening right now, that is not of the Lord, because God is not a God of chaos. So
Mm-hmm.
trying to teach people to have wisdom, discernment, and not just react of what's happening because it's all emotionally based, right? They lie about the little boy that was taken by ICE, the little girl that's, being trapped behind a cage, and it's all Trump's fault, Trump, Trump, Trump. It's like but it's all been done on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
This is all a Saul Alinsky tactic. Whatever, and I want your audience to understand this, whatever, and you know it, but whatever they're talking about, whatever they're projecting, is exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
hoping you're just going to keep repeating it, just like you said earlier. Repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, and then they're going to. You say it enough times, they're gonna say, "Oh, that must be true."
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where, when you said, "What do?" We just have to really stop and think what is happening. And I'm telling your audience, and I've lived it. I've been in it. I'm in it. If you're listening and regurgitating what any of the media is saying, you are bamboozled, and you are just being pulled up, right over a cliff, kind of like the Price is Right, or not Price is Right. Yeah, Price is Right, where that little guy goes up the
Oh,
hill
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right over the cliff, and you're being bamboozled, and you're going to lose your country. And I just ask you, where do you go from here? If all of a sudden they're slipping in because it sounds good. Mandami sounded good. He looks good. He talks to you where everything's free. Well, nothing is free. Nothing. Look, at you went to fight. I'm sure you have men and women that fought next to you that aren't even here anymore because they died for the privilege of you and me to be sitting here having this conversation, for you to do what you're doing with the warriors, to be helping them. You know, there are men and women that have fought and died for the privilege of us being able to do that. You cannot do that in another country. You can't do that. You have to, the ID. There's so much here that I think people get exhausted. They get, um, they're just exhausted with all the stuff coming at us. And I think what's happening, they're doing it on purpose to throw everything at us so that we go home, go to bed, put the covers over our head, and say, Jesus, come right now.
Well, and there's a lot of truth to that. And this has all been done on purpose. It's taken a long time. This is a plan that's been implemented for decades. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a plan to dumb down our people. It's happening in these schools. I was blessed, man. God showed me, I'm going to say about 25 years ago, Sue, to turn the news off. I haven't watched news in 25 years. Now, it wasn't for the reason then that would be for me now. To me, it was all negative. Every time you turn the news on, it was negative screamed from the rooftops. And I'm
Yeah.
talking clear back in 2000, 99, 2000, 2001. It was, oh my gosh, this is the storm of the century. It's devastating. There's been blah, blah, bloodshed. It was just everything was escalated times 10 to make it more scary. if you
Mm.
will. So that's turned into the population learning how to be controlled by emotion. Emotion will lie to you.
Oh gosh, yes.
Emotion will lie to you. It will make you mad when maybe you shouldn't be. It'll make you sad when maybe you shouldn't be. It takes away our ability to think cognitively and with facts. And so it's been done on purpose. So I asked you a question, and I want to kind of reiterate that. What should we be looking for right now? Because there are a lot of the United States of America that are still in a bubble. It's not right next to them. They don't see it on a daily basis. I want to answer that my own question there for just a moment. Then I want to come back to you and give you time to think about that. What should we be looking for? Well, I do believe that the COVID debacle, the pandemic, the greatest test of obedience the world has ever seen, allowed that window to be open where it could be seen. I'm going to give you an example, and I don't think I've ever given this to you, anybody publicly. But my radio promoter for my first single, a song I wrote called Freedom, is Canadian. And I released the song right after the pandemic began. So Fort Lauderdale was shut down March the 23rd, 2020. I released Freedom July the 3rd. I'm sorry, yeah, March the 23rd. I released the song Freedom July the 3rd, 2020 on radio around the world. And my radio promoter was Canadian. They were being, and now we had it kind of bad in a lot of parts of the U.S. They say that Florida was the most free state. I don't know. I live in the communist capital of Florida in Broward County. I was kicked out of a lot of places for not wearing a mask. But let's just say we were. But Canada, good Lord all mercy. My radio promoter told me she had actually went to a local drugstore similar to Walgreens, that they had allowed them to go in, allowed them now to go into these stores and purchase. And they had things that were open to buy and things that were not open to buy. And Sue, she actually tried to buy a birthday card for her son, and they wouldn't allow it because it wasn't necessary. It wasn't something that was deemed worthy during COVID for them to be able to purchase. Now, Glenn, why is that a big deal? Well, dadgummit, Canada is supposed to be the sister to the U.S. when it comes to freedom. And they were just told they couldn't buy a card just a few years ago. How many of us were told we had to get the poke, had to get the jab, or we were going to lose our jobs, or we couldn't travel, or things like that? That's similar to these countries that you've lived in, Sue,
Oh
where
yes.
it doesn't matter what you feel like you want to do. You will comply or you won't get, or in some instances, you'll be shot. Let me go back to you, Sue. What should we be looking for today if we live in small town Georgia that's an hour and a half away from Atlanta and doesn't see all this stuff that's going on with mosques and with lawlessness and things like that, that we're still in postcard USA? What should we be looking for, and how do we find it?
Well, you have to, how do you get, I mean, this is kind of an amazing question, because how do you get people to, number one, stop watching that news? I think it's a deeper question. It's like, well, what is it that you believe, and why do you believe it? And once you believe something and you know that it's factual or coming from a biblical perspective, what does God say about this? Are you willing to comply? Are you willing? But you have to know what you're willing to not do. Or if I'm in a little town and all of a sudden they tell me, like, I mean, I was kind of like you. I mean, I'm in Boca, but I didn't wear a mask. I mean, people would, I'd go into the grocery store and they'd say, "Oh, ma'am, you got to wear a mask." I said, "No, I'm exempt, but thank you. Have a blessed day." And then I'd be going down the aisle with the arrow, and then people would coming at me and they'd be mad because I don't have a mask on, but they're going down the wrong way. I mean, it's just so convoluted, but I'd be like, I just stood my ground. And now, are you supposed to, follow the law? Yes. But when it comes to something like this, where, you're not going to make me put something in my body. Now, I have a lot of friends that took the jab. I mean, there's a lot of podcasters that took that now they regret it. I'm not pointing the finger at that, but the question is, what are we to look for? I think you have to look at yourself. And so what are you willing? Like, that's what we do at Win, Glenn. What makes us a little different is I ask questions, and Jesus asked questions. I don't want to go up and say, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing that." don't take the lie. Don't listen to them. No, you have to say, first of all, if you're coming to a meeting or you're listening to me, I go, why are you here? What brought you to this meeting? Why? I want to stir the pot, getting people to think. The second question is, what is important to you? Not to your spouse, your best friend, your neighbors, your kids, to what the media is saying, but what really floats your boat. And I think that's the question to get to what you're saying, because unless you know what you believe, you're just going to go along to get along because your neighbors are doing it or you're whatever. But the third question is, why do you believe the way you believe? Can you articulate why you're an American? I don't know. Why are you a Christian? Why are you an atheist? Why are you a Republican, Democrat, Jewish? I don't really care. Why? Do you know that 87% of people in this country have no idea why they're Republican or Democrat?
Sure.
They are because their families, their neighbors, their spouses. Josh McDowell took 100 pastors and said, why are you a Christian and why are you a pastor? And Glenn, half of them couldn't tell him. And so therefore, how are you going to change anything? Or what are we to say to the question, to your question, what are we supposed to look for? You gotta know what you believe and why you believe it to be able to look what is right and what is wrong. I don't know if I'm answering that right.
Well, no, I think it is, but see, that comes from indoctrination. And unfortunately, the indoctrinated don't know they're indoctrinated.
Well, that's the point. That's why the questions value or matter. Because so when I go to people, I go, there was a very, very left-leaning Jewish man, and he was very tall. I was looking up at him, and I'm only 5'4"
I look up at everybody, Sue. It's just how I live my life.
Well, I look up to you. I do, and I don't mean that statually wise, but the point is that so I'm looking up at him, and he looks at me, and we're talking, and he was so left leaning, I wanted to uppercut him, but I was like, Sue, don't lose your witness. Just be calm, be quiet. So he's talking to me, and he says, Sue, I hope I'm not offending you. And I looked at him, and I said, I'll call him Sal. I go, Sal, you couldn't offend me. I said, but I don't know where you're coming up with this stuff. And then I looked right at him and I said, because you know what, Sal, you're entitled to your opinion. You're just not entitled to your own facts. I knocked him on his arm and I said, but listen, you have an awesome, blessed day. I turned around to walk away and he goes, where are you going? I go, listen, you call me because I got to go. I really do. The man calls me about every 3 weeks. He wants to just get into it. People are looking for answers. And so when people are doing stuff, you can say to them, why? Can I ask you what's important to you? Why are you doing that? Or why are you so angry? Jesus has questions. And that I think softens it too, instead of just barreling down to somebody and say, don't you tell me what to do, or you better get involved in this pro-life thing. You better get involved in this fight. You better get involved. Well, as soon as you tell people what to do or what to get involved in, even though they probably agree with you, what happens? Whoop, the pride comes up and don't tell me what I'm going to do. Right?
Girl, I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I have it.
Me too.
During this whole COVID debacle, when I was traveling and having to fly, and I would hear it come across the network, right? The speaker in the airports. This is the mandate, and you must comply. Oh no! Don't tell me I must comply unless you want to see something. And then I'd have to put myself in check if I wanted to fly. I had to.
Well, that's why I didn't fly. That's why that gives me a little bit of solace, because that's why we have our RV. I very, very and really when it's a blue moon, I will go on a plane. Otherwise, I would rather get in my bus in our RV. It's wrapped, it's very cool looking, and people ask questions and we get to stir the pot. We get to answer people on the road, and people are looking, Glenn, they're looking for you. The fact that you're having this podcast, people are looking for the warriors. People are looking for people that their yes is their yes, their no is their no. They're not perfect, but they're just standing for what is right, true, and noble. And I really believe that. So it's kind of fun to do that. And I'm the bus driver, so but I'd rather do that because I can get out of Florida by the time you just get onto your plane, because you've had to wait for 2 to 3 hours.
Sure. Well, I think at the end of the day,
but I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, it does. And I think at the end of the day, it's a personal journey. First of all, what you're saying, and I believe it to be true, you have to be willing to take an internal look. You got to look here first. Before you can look out there and understand anything, you have to look here. Why do you believe what you believe? And if you don't know, then you need to figure that out. Why do you believe what you believe? Again, I'm going to go back to before 2017. I was a combat veteran. I was a business owner. I was a Christian. Those things were all facts. But loving my country and believing it was the best thing out there since sliced bread and that they cared for me, that was the propaganda that I had just bought. And it was not the truth. And I didn't know that it was not the truth until I got slapped right in the head with it. Now, for me, it took going to jail for 73 days in 2 different jails for nothing more than an accusation with no evidence. It took me losing everything, from my home to my car to 80% of my business to my eyesight in my right eye. It took a year of just barely keeping my head above water for God then to come back and say, okay, are you ready? Now I've got to show you some things. I don't want people to go through what I went through. I wouldn't recommend that on anybody. And maybe it's because I'm one of his most hard-headed creations that it took something like that. I don't know. But I guarantee you he got my attention. And now here's my answer. Go to the sources of truth to find out what and why you believe. Now, Sue, those sources of truth probably aren't going to be found on YouTube videos that have the algorithm programmed towards you.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to be found on your Facebook account, which, oh, by the way, has an algorithm that's designed to show you stuff that you already align with. The way you do that is to research people and go to people that have experienced what you're concerned about. And in this instance right now, Sue, you're one of those people that was born in Venezuela, has lived in 4 different continents, has seen things from communism to Muslimism to the fall of countries. And I want to come back to that in just a moment. And I want you to talk to us about what's happening right now in Venezuela, what's happening right now in Iran. Why is this important and how does it affect us in the U.S.? But I want to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. I want you to be here because I want the folks that if this is the first time you've seen me, I want you to understand what God told little Glenn to do. About 1.5 years ago, I thought I was just writing a song. And now that whole thing has changed into a movie in this podcast and now a foundation. And I want you to get an idea of what we're doing. So hang tight for about 1:30. Watch this.
So I had a 60 millimeter mortar that landed 3 feet in front of me. And so it didn't cook off. And so it technically, they would consider it to be a dud, but it wasn't a dud. It had a broken propeller on it. I got pictures of it. I carry with me and stuff. It's about the size of a 1.5-liter bottle. But it has kill radius about 25 meters, 20 to 25 meters. So basically, if that round would have went off, then confirmed dead would have been 20 to 25 meters. Been 31 months since I've been able to stand on even with a brace or being able to take one single step. So it's been 31 months to the day yesterday.
And then God leaned in and he said, you know what? You're going to do a foundation. You're going to be the one to help these boys and some girls, I'm sure, get to walking again, back on their feet.
It became so real when we physically came here and I physically got to see face to face to that unit. And knowing that, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much like an avatar. I mean, I felt like I, plugged in and we became one, like I was breathing with it, like, I mean, it just incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine, I can't even describe the feeling that I had. But like, it was like deep down inside of me, it's like, you know what, I felt like I can fight again. I really am able to stand again, and I'm like, I can do this.
Like, I guess the sense of pride, like to stand tall, no matter what height you are. Not a jab at Glenn, but just to stand. Just to stand, I think is huge. We take it for granted.
Y'all, this is a warrior's got to have a why. We don't fight for no reason. A warrior's got to have a why. And that's one of my whys. These guys and girls that have come back from putting it all on the line for us. And I was interviewed on NTD News a few months ago. And I was asked, why do you do what you do? Well, here's the thing. When these guys and girls sign this dotted line, and if you've ever worn a uniform, you did, you're willing to not only give your life, but you give the best, the very best of who you are. You give your youth, you give your talents, you give your athleticism, you give your mental acuities, you give that. And then something happens and you're wounded and you come back home and our government gives the bare minimum. That's not okay with me. And so we established the Finish This Fight Foundation right now, primarily concerned with putting exoskeletons on paralyzed veterans to let them walk again, because the technology is here now. These guys don't have to be in a chair any longer, and we're going to shine a light on that. So if you get a chance, let me put that up real quick. If you get a chance and you got a couple of extra bucks and you'd like to help us, by the way, that young man there is going to be in Houston, not Houston, in Fort Worth later this month, being trained on the take-home model, and he's going to be the guinea pig while it's going through FDA approval. So within a few weeks, he's going to be walking almost all the time, and we're pretty proud of that. But we need some help. This is not cheap. It's about $150,000 for each unit that we're going to supply to these veterans. So givesendgo.com/finish this fight. Givesendgo.com/finish this fight. Do me a favor. Wherever you're watching this podcast from, share it with your people. Help me get the word out. And I appreciate you more than you can know. So that is my why, Sue Trombino. And you and I have talked about that before. Let's go back to what's happening today. You've got a unique perspective, having been born in Venezuela, having lived all over the continents, all over the 4 different continents. What do you see that's taking place in Venezuela, Iran, different places right now, and why should we be watching that? And how is that similar to what's taking place here in the U.S.? Are those signs that we need to be looking for here?
Well, I think there's a bigger picture, and I think sometimes we as Americans tend to look at just one thing, and I think we need to really look at the bigger picture because we're all connected, right? And the reason they've brought in so many illegals from all over, done on purpose, to create chaos and to try to take down America. I mean, that's I really believe that. But what's happening in Venezuela right now, I think, the day that, what Trump did to Venezuela was just unbelievable. When you have 99% of Venezuelans ecstatic, there's a reason. But the thing is, the people that say otherwise, they don't know what they're talking about. They're regurgitating I always say the propaganda, banana republic on steroids, socialist.
Somebody didn't like what you were saying, Sue. We just lost connection. If you can hear me.
To get all the moving parts. I mean, you've got the oil, there's so many things that, I don't even know all of this stuff, but Venezuela was the wealthiest country in all of South America. And then in the world too, we were incredibly wealthy. But because when you get a communist in, socialist in, a Marxist in, they take their money, but then they don't take care of the oil. They let everything go to heck in a handbasket. And so I think what's happening with the oil, they have to come in, they have to redo the piping, they have to just really redo everything with oil. And so, but people are still afraid there because, like I said earlier, is that this isn't just, come in, take out Maduro. There's a whole process because there's still, even the gal that Maduro put in, Darcy, she's worse than he is.
Right.
So people don't understand the dynamics of this. Is so embedded. If you think we have a deep state, it's not even everybody calls it the swamp. I don't call it a swamp. I call it a sewer. But again, what do we have to pay attention to? We have to pay attention to what is changing around you. What are you not allowed to do anymore? Your freedoms are starting to be taken away little by little, like the proverbial frogs in the pot. And if that's happening, somebody asked me today, do you think that please tell me that you think we're going to win in the midterms? I said, well, first of all, I personally believe we will, because I think things are becoming so personal to people. And that's the difference between America and overseas. And if I can kind of get to some part of your question, dear. If we were Venezuela or Cuba or whatever, we'd already be done. But the difference is we've already tasted freedom. We have a constitutional republic, not a democracy. And people need to understand the definitions of those, because we willy-nilly say words that we don't even know what the word is. People call it, people fascist. And I go, I don't think you know what the word fascist is. And so when people say those things, they just don't know what they're talking about. But I think right now in America, things are becoming a little bit more personal. All of a sudden, New York, they know that they are in trouble. What did we do? Because now all of a sudden it's become personal. Their trash isn't being picked up. They're trying to take away, in every part of the country, you can say, well, they're trying to take away my guns, or they're trying to make me take the jab, or they're trying to control. Well, that's not what we do in America. We want limited government. Well, the bigger the government, the less freedom you have. The more the smaller the government, the more freedom you have. And that's where people have to understand, and why they have to get engaged. And don't assume your legislator, your congressman, your senator, your local, your mayor, and all that. Don't assume they've got your best interest at heart, because follow the money. So we have to really we have to take onus. We can't be pointing the finger, Glenn, at all these people, Obama, Biden, all this. You know why? Because we have 3 pointing back at ourselves. We're the problem, because we have become, we have dumbed down, because we assume everybody's going to do the right thing. Then all of a sudden, it's like in 1962 and 63. Well, why did our country go down? Go back to when it really started going down the hill. It was in 1962 and 63 when they took out prayer and Bible out of the school. You started taking away what God's providential hand did to this country. He put his hand on this country, and he says to be a good steward of what I've given you. We have not been a good steward. He says to occupy until I come. Are you willing to occupy? That means, are you willing to be engaged in something? Oh, I don't want to get involved in politics or religion. I go, really? I said this to 100 pastors. I said, I know some of you don't want to get involved in politics, but I said, I'd like to ask you, what Bible are you reading? Who did Jesus speak to? Jesus spoke to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Well, who were they? They were the government of the day. Look at Joseph, Esther. But look at Daniel. One man stood up to the worst. You could take Mao Zedong, Lenin, Hitler, Obama, Hillary, all the left-leaning nuts, Marxism, socialism put together. They look like fairies compared to Nebuchadnezzar. But what happened? Because one man stood. And we have an incredible book called One Man, Does the American Man Still Have What It Takes? And every man that's listening on your podcast should get that book, because it really is about the warrior that, like you, Glenn, the warriors that are stepping up. Is like, what makes them different? Well, they knew their purpose. They know why they're fighting. They love America. Or your grandchildren, I do this for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, because what is your legacy going to be? So whether you have children or not, what is your legacy going to be? And what are you going to be remembered for? But we're not perfect, like I said earlier, but we are exceptional. And I dare anybody to go to all the places I've lived and live there for, I'm going to say live there for a year. You wouldn't even last 6 months. You wouldn't come back here. You will kiss the ground that you walk on.
Right.
But you have to get engaged. You can't just, somebody else is going to, Glenn's going to do it. Glenn's going to do this thing for the warriors. No, everybody needs to get involved and donate, whether it's $5, whether, everybody on this podcast needs to donate to this, to what Glenn's doing, because these men and women fought for our freedom, that we get to do this. And yet we're focused on all stupid, piddly things instead of looking at the bigger picture, being humble, saying, thank you, Lord, count your blessings that you live in the greatest country on the face of the planet. You can tell I'm on my soapbox, but thank a veteran. And, and just stand, because if you lose America, where do you go from here?
Sue, that's where we are. We've gotten to that point. And on the points that you just made, I was guilty. I was the complacent one. I was the one that, I don't really like that, but man, I don't want to mess with politics. Somebody else will fix it. Y'all, somebody else ain't going to do what God's put on your heart to do.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Yeah.
And it takes many of us. What do we have now that are standing up? I don't know. I would say it's probably 1% of our population are really standing up to try to make a difference. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's less than that. It takes more of us to get it done. And God is calling you. He's calling you right now. If you're watching this, you've listened to Sue. You've listened to little Glenn. He wants you actively involved. First of all, you got to figure out what you believe and listen to him, and he's going to let you know. Secondly, once you figure that out, it's time to get involved. Don't just say, well, somebody else is going to do it. No, you've got a responsibility. Freedom is not only not free, it's not cheap. It costs somebody something. And when we get to the point, if we've lost some freedoms, you talk about probably not going to get it back. You're not going to get it back. Once they get control, they try to take your guns. You're not going to get them back. It's just not going to happen. So if anything out of today's podcast, out of today's show, if anything you could get out of that is take a look at yourself and see, what is it do you believe? And secondarily, what is it you need to be doing? There's something that you can do that maybe nobody else can. Or there's something that you can do that helps somebody that's doing something that maybe nobody else can. Time to get involved and get up off the couch and do something. There's something you can do. You and I have a mutual friend, Sue. I had a chance to sit down with Alan West about 1.5 years ago when I filmed the movie, Finish This Fight. And that's one of the things that Alan and I talked about is, it's time to get off the couch. I don't know, it's maybe on your side. It's time to get off the couch, and it's time to do something. And so I think we're having some technical problems with Sue. So I'm going to leave you with this. Come back next week, Finish This Fight Hour. We'll be here on Tuesday. I don't have my guests lined up yet. I've got some possibilities. It's going to be some great shows. So on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Finish This Fight Hour. Come on board. But guys, find your why. This country is in jeopardy of not being what we've always known it to be, and we need your help. Secondarily, Sue Trombino, weimpactthenation.org. Go check them out and get involved there. She's a great warrior as well. And thirdly, my name is Glenn Baker. I am your host here on the Finish This Fight Hour, and Glenn, Uncle Glenn, loves you. And I'll see you on the other side.
Forward, halt, left, 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 right, your left, 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 right. Bound on,
Arkansas boy with a lifelong plan took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line, while tears streamed from his mama's eyes. They hopped right up